Hello my friends, with the Halo 1 remake on the horizon, I want to talk about something very important today. I want to talk about what I think should and probably will change about the original Halo 1 in the Halo 1 remake. Specifically, I want to go through every level individually and pick out maybe 2 or 3 of the main things that I both want and hope to see changed, because although Halo 1 might be a bona fide masterpiece in my eyes, it's not perfect. No piece of art ever is. Yes, even Halo 2 and Metal Gear Solid 2, as much as it hurts my soul to say that. So I want to go through and take a look at what I think should change in this remake. And I want to start before we even get into the game itself. I want to start with the menu, because as you all know, Halo's menus, at least historically, were incredibly iconic. Not just because they were nice to navigate and pretty to look at, but because, at least in the Bungie era, all the menus set the tone and the vibe and the aesthetic of the game perfectly. They were the best jumping on point for getting into the game. They set the vibe immaculately. And I gotta say, so far with the remake, the menu that we've seen, it's definitely not Bungie quality. However, compared to every 343 menu, it is night and day. But I've got some improvements that I want to see. So right now, as you can see, the menu is literally just a pan through a bunch of different clips of the Slient Cartographer with a kind of greenish hue put over it, which is a great starting point, but there's so much more they could do with this. You gotta remember that this game is gonna be the first Halo experience for a lot of people, specifically on PlayStation, so you don't really want to give too much away with the menu background, and so what I really want to do is actually what Valkyrie said right here. I think it'd be awesome if, when you first boot the game, the background is just like a very original Halo 1 styled pan of the ring. But then completing a level unlocks a new set of kind of pans for the menu. So say you're up to the Slient Cartographer. Well, every single level up until that point would have pans in the menu that would crossfade between each other. So in a way, like he said, it'd be kind of like Half-Life 2, which I really dig. I do have to just say real quick though, I'm very happy they've gone for this style of menu over literally any of the other 343 ones that were kind of just static images. This menu, even though it's not perfect, has infinitely more source than any Halo menu that we've had for like over a decade at this point. It's a great starting point, just some really cool things they could change to make it even better. So, jumping into the Pillar of Autumn, the first thing that I want to see change is something that I want to see stay the same, but also change, and that is the tutorial. Needless to say, Halo 1's tutorial is beyond iconic. Not only is it just purely iconic, but at the same time, it is a genuinely great tutorial for the base mechanics of the game that also at the same time segues into the story of the game really well and really naturally. I think some games suffer from the issue of tutorials feeling very disconnected from the overall game, whereas Halo 1 makes the tutorial contextual, and I love that. However, one thing that I really want to see changed is the ability to skip the tutorial on any difficulty, because on regular Halo 1, unless you're playing on Legendary, every time you play Pillar of Autumn, you have to go through the tutorial, which is quite annoying for people like me who play the game like thousands of times at this point. Maybe have it so once you've completed the campaign for the first time, you have the option to just skip it. The next thing that I really want to see on Pillar of Autumn is a much more dynamic skybox. Of course, in OG Halo 1, Bungie was severely limited with this because obviously the hardware of 2001 just didn't really allow for tons of stuff going on beyond the boundaries of the level, but now we don't have those limitations anymore. I want to see longswords dogfighting with seraphs out the window, cruisers launching plasma bombardments at the Pillar of Autumn while she returns fire with her MAC cannons, and so much more. I want to feel like this ship is at the heart of a galactic war that it realistically is in universe. And you know, I gotta say, Bungie did this excellently with the Cairo in Halo 2. If you look out the windows on Cairo Station, it really does feel like you're in the middle of a full-blown Earth invasion, which of course you are. And that was done in 2004. There is no way that that can't be done now with UE5 running on Blam. That has to be done. The third thing I want to see on POA is more high-ranking troops near the bridge. So, of course, with the captain being on the bridge, you would assume that it would be really locked down, but in regular Halo 1, of course, given that there were no ODSTs in Halo 1, it's just Marines there. But I want to see that change. I think having ODST guards, or maybe some like special, really high-ranking Marines, almost like Gears of War's Onyx guards, for example, guarding the bridge, would be really, really cool. Totally, like, unnecessary, just a nice little cool thematic change. So, moving on to the surface of Halo, with the fittingly named Halo, The biggest thing that I want to see change, which I think we're all on the same page with, is the addition of wildlife. Of course, Bungie originally designed this level with wildlife in mind, and its absence is really apparent in the regular version of the level. I'm not going to say the environment feels dead, because it doesn't, but you can tell that there's something missing, and the Halo 1 remake has to rectify that. The main wildlife that I really want to see running around these plains is, of course, the blind wolves. They were meant to be there originally. They are the most iconic cut piece of wildlife in all of Halo. They are canon now, so there's no reason not to add them. I mean, hell, we've already seen some of the wildlife on the Slient Cartographer. In fact, the wildlife that is on that level in the current build of the remake is actually really good. They've really gone out of their way to make it feel like a real lived world. Let's extend that to Halo and include the blind wolves. And actually, you know, whilst we're on the topic of cut enemies, especially in Halo 1, please give us the Sharkoi. I'm begging you. These guys have been cut from so many Halo games at this point. They're canon, they're in the lore, but they've been cut from so many Halo games. And they're another one of the examples of one of Halo's many links back to Marathon. So bringing them back in some capacity, hell, maybe even in the Chief and Jonathan prequel story, would just be incredible. Now, something that I do want to see actually changed from the original Halo is more variance with the marine camps. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this level, I think it's great, but I don't love it as much as everybody else seems to. I think for me, this level has gotten quite repetitive over the years, especially compared to Slient Cartographer, which is a kind of similar styled level, like semi to full open world. I think that level has far more variance and just far more replayability to it than Halo does, because I'm just going to the exact same 3 camps across the map. I think if they vary the locations of the camps and say, maybe had 3 marine camps, but 6 possible locations they could spawn in every game, that kind of random variance would add so much more to the vibe of the level and would also give me more of a reason to explore beyond the fixed beaten path after my first playthrough. Because that's one of the things. With Halo, like, again, I've played that level like 1,000 times now. I know exactly where each of the 3 camps are, and even though there are more areas in that world to go to, I never go to them because there's no point, whereas if they randomize the location of the marine camps, well, I'll have more of a reason to explore with each playthrough. Now, moving on to Truth and Reconciliation, this is one of the levels that I think has the most potential with changes. The first major thing that I want to see changed, given the nature of the mission that you're on, is the addition of ODSTs. I really want to see Chief infill with ODSTs onto the ship, because at the end of the day, you're going to save the captain, right? You need the absolute elite of the elite alongside Chief. And yeah, Marines are great, Marines are awesome, but man, raiding that ship with ODSTs, even though that's not how the current canon is, I do think would be an awesome thematic change to really build the kind of severity of the mission that you're on. Because yeah, obviously, you know, it's quite severe because you're going to rescue the captain from an enemy ship, but if you had ODSTs alongside you, I just feel like that would be so cool. It'd also be a really great way to introduce the ODSTs, whilst at the same time clearly differentiating them from the Marines. They aren't just your regular soldiers. These guys are, at least besides the Spartans, the best of the best. But hands down, the number one change that I want to see, not just on Truth and Rec, but arguably in the entirety of Halo 1, is the addition of stealth mechanics. And of course, the intro section to Truth and Rec is absolutely built for it. In fact, it almost feels like Bungie designed the entire thing for stealth, but kind of just forgot to implement the stealth stuff at the last minute. I've played so many mods now that let you stealth the intro section before you get to the lift, and it just feels so natural. It really does feel how the level should have always been played, and this is the number one thing I want to see them add. And you know, to go one step further, there's a lot of talk at the moment about one of the 9 new weapons that they're adding being the SMG, given that they've kind of nerfed the Halo 1 AR down to 32 rounds to possibly make room for the SMG. So if they're going to add any SMG to the game, I would love for that to be the M7S, the suppressed SMG, to fit with stealthing the intro section of Truth and Rec. Of course, the game doesn't have dual wielding, so the only other option, if they are adding the SMG, is just a single-wielded, like, singular SMG, which I think would be really boring, to be honest with you. If you're going to add an SMG and you're not going to do dual wielding, at the very least, add the M7S and have it integrate with that stealth gameplay. Yes, the shirt that I'm wearing might be biasing me a little bit here, but I just feel like the entire level is themed perfectly around stealth, and to have to go through it loud again would really, really suck. It's the kind of gameplay that Halo's never really done properly. There's been little instances here and there where you can backsmack one or two elites and grunts and then everything goes loud. I want proper, fully functioning Splinter Cell / Metal Gear Solid style stealth in Halo 1's remake. It would fit perfectly. So with this remake on the horizon now, it's time to start eyeing up a new PC. Thankfully, my sponsor, Apex Gaming PCs, have you covered with our line of Flood-themed PCs. From the pure form to the higher-end Gravemind and the ultra-high-end Primordial build, there's a build of all price and power point for you to choose from. Just head to the link in the description and pick one of these bad boys up today. Now, jumping over to the Slient Cartographer, I'm actually not really going to talk about this much because I think that it's not my favourite Halo level, but I do think that it's the most perfectly designed example of Halo's gameplay loop and level design in the entire franchise. And that said, as well, having played the actual build of it in the remake, not much has really changed, so I think the approach they're going for, at least with that level, is to keep it mostly the same because, you know, don't fix what ain't broke. 343 were absolute bastards for doing that, to be honest with you, and I mean, Halo Studios clearly are in some places as well, but I think here they've kind of learned their lesson that the Slient Cartographer, at least in terms of layout and progression, is pretty much perfect and nothing needs changing because nothing can be improved. I will say though, aside from all my problems with like the aesthetic and stuff like that in the build that I played, there are two things that I really want to see added back to the Slient Cartographer. First one being power-ups, and I mean the actual power-ups. None of this nonsense Halo 5 and Infinite button thing. Those things are so dull. I'm talking the actual OG power-ups. Wait for it. This bad boy. It's not turned on right now. Shout out Green Knight. But this bad boy and also the camera module, I want to see them back. We did see that there's a button prompt for activating an ability, so I do wonder if they're going to have those and have like an almost Doom 2016 style animation where like Chief gets it and crushes in his hand. Like that would be so sick with those power-ups, but either way, I want to see those come back. And also, in addition, I need to see the Covenant comm crate make its return. That thing is just so quintessential to the vibe and the atmosphere and the aesthetic of Halo 1. And it wasn't there in the build that I played, which is sacrilege. Bring it back. Moving on to the assault in the control room, this is one of my favourite Halo 1 levels purely because it's a snow level, but there's definitely some stuff that I want to see changed, and I think the most universally approached thing in that regard is adding more variance to the Forerunner rooms. I love the design of the Forerunner rooms in this level. I'm also not a big stickler for repetitiveness either. I don't mind the repetitive rooms. That said though, I would love more variance in the hallways and the rooms that we go through in the cliffside. There's not really much to say in that regard, I just want more different rooms. I want more rooms that flesh out the actual facility there, because we still don't really know what that facility is beyond the phase pulse generators, of course, so add more rooms that give us more of an insight into what the Foreigners use these hallways for, or what these rooms were originally used for, just more to give us more context to the area and flesh out the backstory of it, which is one of the things that they say they want to go into more with certain levels, environmental storytelling. Well, that's one of the best ways to do that. And the other thing that I want to see changed is more large-scale warfare. Of course, Assault in the Control Room is the tank level in Halo 1, and yeah, there's one tiny section of the level where you do get some large-scale warfare, but that's kind of it. Most of the rest of it is just tank versus infantry. I want more huge, large-scale warfare with tons of wraiths and maybe even a couple scorpions rolling out alongside you as well now that Marines can drive. Honestly, take the vibes of the Ark in Halo 3 when the Dawn comes in and you roll out with a Lance of Scorpions and put it into Assault in the Control Room and have it feel like this kind of desperate rally with the troops that you find in the valley in Scorpions against tons of Wraiths. I would love that. So, moving on to my favourite level in Halo 1, Shock Horror 343 Guilty Spark, and there's some definite things that I would like to see changed / added here. Mostly within the facility. The biggest thing is that I really want to see some facility interaction similar to what Ruby added to his Rebalance mod. So in his mod, there's tons of nodes and terminals and power conduits on the wall that you have to use to open certain doors or unlock new areas in the level. You have to turn the power on to activate certain terminals which unlock certain things. It's a real intricate and grounded and realistic way to do environment interactability, and it does make the facility feel that bit more realistic, even though it's set 500 years in the future. There's even one section where if you save an engineer from the flood, it will then come down and activate a node for you, which is just ingenious and also very contextual and lore accurate design. It really does make that facility feel canon and just so immersive. You feel like you're exploring not just a set of blocked out walls that a level designer has made, it feels like you're exploring an actual flood research facility made by the actual foreigners. But then coming out of the facility, an area of the level that I think is actually really slept on is the swamp, because we don't really spend much time in it. We kind of rush through the swamp at the start to get into the facility, and then we kind of rush out of it at the end to escape. We don't really get to spend any proper time exploring the swamp, and that's something that I'd really like to see changed in the remake. Yeah, the vibe of the facility is really creepy, this desolate, abandoned, ancient research facility. Terrifying. But you can't deny as well that that swamp just sets the tone amazingly. It has such a creepy vibe to it, and exploring that and encountering infected in the swamp in the dead of night with the fog would just be awesome. Especially with how this swamp is looking in the remake. I mean, dude, I said it in my last video, but it's giving real gothic horror vibes. Exploring a gothic horror themed swamp with the flood would... I have no words. And you know, kind of off the back of that as well, something that I'd like to see changed and added that's really obvious and it applies to all the levels from here on out is more horror pertaining to the flood. I don't need to elaborate on that because we're all on the same page. Hell, even Halo Studios are on the same page with that as well, but I just felt like I had to mention it because it'd be sacrilege if I didn't. So, the library, everybody's favorite Halo level. Let's talk about the library. So, I have some ideas as to what I want added to this level, and a lot of it kind of boils down to making it a sort of alternate version of Quarantine Zone in Halo 2, because the more that I thought about it when I was writing this video, the more I realized that it really has the potential to kind of execute on a lot of what Quarantine Zone did, but possibly just in a better way. So, the first thing that I want to see, which is kind of in line with Halo Studios' idea to increase the variance with the enemies in the level, is more Sentinel variants. In particular, I want to see the Enforcers back. We've not had them since 2004. 2004. And if you ask me, the library would be the best place to reintroduce them. Firstly, the environment of the library is more than big enough to facilitate Enforcers. I mean, again, so many Halo 1 mods have integrated Enforcers into the library, and they feel so at home. It doesn't feel like they're too cramped or like they don't belong. They feel perfect on that level. Secondly, at this point in the outbreak, it's getting pretty bad. The Flood are spreading quite heavily. I mean, the fact that the library is sustaining an outbreak is a pretty big deal. And which kind of Sentinel happens to have massive AoE damage against infected hosts? Why the Enforcers, of course. It'd also be great from a gameplay perspective as well, because the Sentinel sandbox would kind of ramp up after Guilty Spark. Of course, you get regular aggressors fighting with you on Guilty Spark, and then you get to this massive flood facility, and all of a sudden, Enforcers are your allies as well, which, again, would be so cool. Imagine the Enforcers being allies. Hoo-hoo-hoo. And then off the back of that as well, something I'd also like to see is a small but kind of solidified Covenant presence as well. How that'd go about happening, I don't know. I still like my idea of some of the Governors of Contrition sneaking in from Arbiter's fleet and going in to feed themselves to the Flood. I think that would be an awesome way to include the Covenant, but just some kind of Covenant presence. Again, Ruby did this really well. There were some areas on the level where the Covenant had backed themselves into a corner and built a kind of small base to hold off against the Parasite. Something like that, just to add a little bit more variance to the level and turn it into more of a three-way war would be awesome. And then, as far as the Flood are concerned, I think that the library is the best place to introduce the pure forms. Halo 2 gave us the next level of the Sentinels. Halo 3 gave us the next level of the Flood, but we never had the two together. And what better place to do that is there than the library? Again, not only would this be perfect from a narrative perspective, because the library is realistically where most of the pure form specimens would have been held, but also from a gameplay perspective, just like with the Sentinels, it'd mean that the Flood sandbox would ramp up after Guilty Spark. Just imagine a version of the library where it's a three-way war between us, allied with Sentinel aggressors and enforcers, against a small contingent of cultish Covenant, and then the Flood with pure forms as well. Tell me that wouldn't make the library one of the sickest levels in the entire franchise. You can't tell me that. I guarantee you're sat there, you're like, you know what? Luke's right. He's right. So, moving on to what I think is kind of a sleeper level in Halo 1, 2 Betrayals. This is the moment where the entire weapon and enemy and kind of vehicle sandbox as well in Halo 1 finally comes together and comes to a head. And it's a very long, quite arduous, but very fun mission. It's also the first mission in the game where we experience any kind of, I don't know, active weather, I guess you'd say. Of course, in the valley, it's snowing. Wait, is it snowing on Assault in the control room? You know, I actually can't remember. I may be wrong on that, but either way, the inclement weather on 2 Betrayals, I think, should be ramped up. I don't know about you, but for years I've wanted actual harsh weather, like Death Stranding style harsh weather in Halo. I was really hoping that Infinite was going to have it, and of course it was nowhere to be seen. But I think that 2 Betrayals would be the best place to do that. With the power of an Unreal 5, there's no way they couldn't do extreme blizzards at certain sections. Like, dude, imagine, right, so, imagine that final section where you emerge from the tunnel and Under Cover of Night starts playing, and it's the final run to the Banshee to the final generator, and the Flood are everywhere, the Covenant are everywhere. Imagine pushing through that valley in a blizzard so thick you can't see like 15 feet in front of you, and there's like infected sprinting at you out of the snow. The vibes of that at nighttime in the valley would be immaculate. I really hope to see some more inclement weather, actually inclement weather this time, on 2 Betrayals. And I guess the second thing that I kind of want to see changed, but I guess carried forward from the library, would just be that Sentinel variance. Again, much like the library, the actual environments of 2 Betrayals are massive, both outside and also in the interiors of the facilities as well. They're pretty big. There's definitely room for enforcers in there. And I'd love to see the enforcers carry forward into that level as well, because, of course, now they'd be our enemies. So in that way, it'd only add to the enemy sandbox, whilst also adding to the context and the fiction of the level. Oh, and also, given that this is not only a vehicle level, but specifically an air vehicle level as well, it'd make even more sense for there to be enforcers, because they'd want to be destroying vehicles so the Flood couldn't commandeer them. You cannot tell me right now that enforcers shouldn't be in this game. Yes, I have a massive sweet spot for them, and yes, I miss them dearly, but I just think they'd fit so well in both the library and also 2 Betrayals. Now then, Keys is an interesting one, because I feel like this level, despite of course the big twist at the end that everyone loves, is probably the most slept on level of Halo 1, and I think it could honestly just do with more personality. I think the areas when you're fighting through the coolant and through the canyons have a lot of personality, but once you get inside the ship, I feel like you're kind of just going through the motions, and I think it should change, right? And the biggest way that I think they could do that is by employing darkness. So I am a huge fan of when Halo makes you use your flashlight. Granted, there are very few instances of that, even in the Bungie era, but the few times that you do are some of my favorite moments in the entire franchise, and I think that Keys would be an excellent level to adopt that. I always thought, despite how destroyed and wrecked the Truth and Wreck really was, it was really bright inside, and I feel like if they just knocked the lights out in the hallways and had the Flood still pour in through the walls and through the ceiling, but just in darkness, and made you have to use your flashlight, that would be so vibey, and it'd add to the overall kind of persona and soul of the level. And then kind of off the back of that, I really hope that one of the extra weapons is the flamethrower, and specifically that it appears on this level, because dude, could you imagine fighting through the cramped hallways of the Truth and Wreck in near darkness with a flamethrower to light your way? Dude, oh my god, sign me up. And that brings us very nicely to the Maw, and a lot of the ideas that I had for Keys I would like to move forward into the Maw as well. The flamethrower, of course, but also the darkness aspect, because again, this is a derelict, destroyed ship. It's a ship that, by the looks of it, based off the fact that they're going off of Bungie's original storyboards, is quite literally cut in half, right? This thing is basically non-functioning, so it should be very dark inside, and so use of the flashlight should be pretty necessary. But there's stuff that I want to see beyond that. Now, one of the biggest things that I want to see moved from Halo the Flood, the book, into the game, It's the story of Zuko Zamami and Yayap. So, very short story if you don't know. During the events of Halo 1, an elite called Zuko Zamami and his grunt compatriot Yayap were sent to assassinate the Master Chief. And basically, all the way throughout the campaign, from Pillar of Autumn all the way up to the Maw, they are like hot on your heels and they almost kill you several times, but it never happens. And then in the end, they both die. Zuka is the elite that you kill on the elevator right at the end of the Maw. And Yayap, well, Yayap doesn't die there. He actually escapes the ship before it explodes. He hacks a backpack or like a case full of like supplies, like water and methane, and he drives off in a ghost into the sunset and basically lives out the last like 3 hours of his life on his own terms, chilling, waiting for the autumn to detonate and his time to come. Which I think would be such a great addition for a legendary ending. Of course, I really want the Chief, the Johnson and Elite hug to still be there, even though it's obviously not canon, but I would also love to see a cutscene that shows Yayap going away in the ghost and just making peace with what's about to happen, sitting on a hilltop, enjoying some water, or whatever it is that he drinks, and just sitting back, waiting for the end to come. That would be a very cool cutscene. And on that note, actually, I would also love to see, given the fact that we're getting way more Johnson in this game, how Johnson actually survived the events of, well, the end of the game. Whether that's turning breaking quarantine into a cutscene, which would be fucking awesome, or, I don't know, having some alternate new entry into the lore that shows how he got out of the facility, and then from the facility to the Pelican in space with some of the ODST, just combining all that together and giving us a cohesive kind of chain of events of how he got off Alpha Halo would be incredible. And that is just perfect, like legendary, or hell, even Lasso ending material. And then the final thing that I want to see that, by the looks of it, again, based on this concept art, I think we will see is a fixed Warthog run. So, of course, the big joke is that the Warthog run in Halo 1 makes absolutely no sense at all. Both in terms of the fact that there's apparently a bridge in the middle of the ship, but also the length of the Warthog run is longer than the ship itself. It makes no sense. It's not a deal breaker, but I would like to see them kind of properly bring that Warthog run into the canon and tie it in with the storyboards more, but again, like we said, it's looking like they're going to be doing that. And I gotta say, 3/4 Halo Studios going back to Bungie's storyboards for Halo 1 and reanalyzing them and reintegrating some of the stuff from those storyboards is awesome. I love that, and I really hope to see more of that throughout the game. So, those are some of the things that I would like to see changed in every level from, well, the main menu all the way up until the Maw. Do you agree with my ideas? Do you want to see some different changes? Let me know down below in the comments. And with that said, I'm going to round that one out there. I want to give a huge thank you to that laugh track ambience for becoming a new iconic one over on Patreon. My dude, thank you very much, my guy. I appreciate that a ton. Welcome to the iconic ones. And of course, thank you to everybody else who supports me over there as well. I really appreciate it. And thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.